Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling the energy consumption of cryptocurrencies. We're going to zoom in specifically on Ethereum. You sent us some really interesting stuff here. There's an academic paper from Georgie Park.
That's the one, yeah. It looked really closely at Ethereum's energy use between 2017 and 2019, and it put it side by side with Bitcoin.
Okay, and then we've also got this lively Reddit thread.
Yeah, miners talking about the real nitty-gritty, like Nvidia drivers and if they actually affect performance.
Right, the practical side. And finally, a guide from Cudo Miner.
Exactly. Sort of walking through how GPU and crypto mining actually works, the setups.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is what? To pull out the key findings about energy use, especially for Ethereum.
Yeah, pretty much. We want to understand the practical side of how this mining really happens.
To see if there are any surprises with hardware and software performance.
Right. And just give everyone a clearer, more insightful picture of this whole topic. It gets debated a lot.
It really does. Okay, so maybe just a quick foundation for anyone less familiar. Cryptocurrency, it's digital money, super popular. Big draw is payments without banks, but the big question mark is always the energy needed for mining.
Absolutely. And that mining process relies on the underlying tech, which is blockchain.
Right. The shared digital ledger.
Exactly. Think of it like a super secure notebook shared across tons of computers. Those are the miners.
Okay.
Every transaction gets checked, put into a block, and these blocks get chained together using, complex math, cryptography.
Creating that transparent, tamper-proof record.
That's the idea. Secure and transparent.
Gotcha. So Bitcoin kicked things off back in, 2008?
Yeah, the OG. Then Ethereum came along in 2014, thanks to Vitalik Buterin.
And Ethereum's a bit different, isn't it? Not just currency, but a platform.
Totally. It runs these smart contracts, basically self-running digital agreements.
And that usage, those contracts, that drives activity, which needs mining.
Precisely. And the Georgie Park paper, it had a snapshot from CoinMarketCap, I think 2023. It showed Bitcoin and Ethereum are still the big players.
Right. Makes sense.
So talking specifically about Ethereum mining, before its big recent change anyway.
Merge, yeah.
Right before the merge. Mining was absolutely crucial. Miners were the ones verifying all the transactions.
Okay.
Making sure everything was legit before adding it to a block on the chain.
And initially, you could use a regular computer CPU for that.
You could, yeah. But the calculations got way more complex, so pretty quickly you needed powerful graphics processing units, GPUs.
Right. And that's where things get interesting. Power-wise, miners often grouped together, didn't they, in mining pools?
To boost their chances, they'd pool all their GPU power together to crack those algorithms.
And the reward for completing a transaction was Ether, Ethereum's currency.
Yep. The successful miner or pool got paid in Ether.
So setting up your own operation back then, it wasn't trivial. You needed special motherboards, lots of RAM.
A serious power supply, good internet, obviously, and cooling. Lots and lots of cooling.
Sounds incredibly power hungry just listing it out.
It definitely could be. Which brings us nicely to that Georgie Park energy study.
Right, the hands-on one.
Yeah, they didn't just look at existing data. They actually built and ran their own mining rigs.
That's cool, so they could measure things directly.
Exactly, from March 2017 to December 2019.
And what kind of gear did they use? You mentioned 196 GPUs?
Yeah, a mix. AMD Radeon RX 580s, some Asus P106 mining cards, and Sapphire Radeon RX 580s too.
Okay. And the rest of the setup?
Corsair power supplies, Asus and ASRock motherboards, Intel Pentium processors, dual core, nothing too fancy there, Kingston RAM, and this specialized Linux OS called Simple Mining.
Optimized for mining. Makes sense.
Yeah, and they were pretty careful about the conditions. Well, the rigs were in these aluminum and wood cases, and they kept the room temperature controlled between 17 and 21 Celsius using fans.
Wow, okay. So really trying to get consistent real-world data.
It seems like a very grounded look,
Did they run into problems? I mean, with that much hardware?
Oh, yeah. They mentioned some GPUs just didn't work right out of the box or didn't perform as expected. Typical real-world stuff.
Right. But they made some observations.
They did. The Asus P106-100, that's the one built for mining, seemed more stable. Its processing speed, the megahertz didn't fluctuate as much.
Okay.
And it was apparently better on heat and electricity use compared to the others.
Interesting. So the specialized hardware was already getting more efficient.
Looks like it. Suggests pretty rapid evolution, probably pushed by, electricity costs.
Makes sense. What about the gaming cards versus the mining ones?
Yeah, they noticed that too. The AMD Radeon RX 580, primarily a gaming card, right?
Right.
Its Merrick's values were less stable than the mining GPUs.
Right.
But the AMD cards actually ran cooler, and the Sapphire cards had slightly better Merrick values overall. So trade-offs.
Always trade-offs. Okay, let's get to the numbers. 2017.
Right. So with 8 GPUs running, they measured about 210 watts per card.
Wow. Okay, times 8. That's nearly 1,700 watts an hour.
1,680 watts per hour, which works out to over 1,200 kilowatt hours a month. Annually, about 14,500 kilowatt hours.
And did they make money?
Estimated annual profit back then was just over $2,000 USD.
But there's always a but.
Yeah, the paper's figure 5 shows that as 2017 went on, the mining difficulty went up. And that started eating into the profits.
Oh, okay. So it's not just the hardware's power draw, it's also how hard the network makes it to actually find a block.
Exactly. The complexity of the puzzles increases.
Got it. What about 2018?
They changed the setup, used 16 mining-specific cards, and interestingly, the power per card dropped quite a bit.
Oh, how much?
Down to about 117 watts per card.
That's a big difference. So they had twice as many cards.
Right, so the total hourly usage was actually a bit higher, around 1872 watts. Annually, that was nearly 16,400 kilowatt hours.
And the profit.
It jumped significantly to over $6,100 USD for the year.
But again,
figure 6 shows that while the hash rate, the total network computing power was high early on, the difficulty increased later in the year. So income dropped off again.
this difficulty adjustment, it's automatic, right? To keep blocks being found at a steady rate.
Exactly. If blocks came too fast, the whole system could get unstable. So more power joins the network, the difficulty goes up, requiring even more power overall. It regulates the block creation speed.
It influences energy demand.
Okay.
In 2019.
10 graphics cards that time, about 150 watts each. So 1,500 watts total per hour.
Okay.
Annual consumption was down a bit, around 13,140 kilowatt hours, but the revenue, that took a hit, dropped to about 1,288 USD for the year.
Ouch. So difficulty and overall hash rate kept climbing?
Yep. Figure 7 shows it clearly impacting earnings. The study basically said, to make the same money as in 2017, you'd have needed much stronger GPUs and used even more electricity in 2019.
It really highlights that sort of arms race in mining. You constantly need better gear just to keep up.
Totally. It's a good illustration of that. And the study put this energy use in context, too.
How so?
Well, figure 2 compared Bitcoin's annual energy use, about 63 terawatt hours, which is huge to entire countries. Like Algeria, Kuwait, Switzerland.
Wow. Okay, that does put it in perspective.
Yeah. And figure 3 even showed the percentage of some countries' total electricity use going to crypto mining. The Czech Republic was notably high.
Really? And they found a link between trading volume and energy use.
A pretty clear one, yeah. More trading activity seemed to correlate with higher energy consumption.
So is it just the transactions themselves driving it? Or is it that higher trading reflects more interest, more miners, more overall activity?
Probably the latter, mostly.
Yeah.
Higher interest, higher prices perhaps, draws in more miners, increases the hash rate, which then drives up difficulty and overall energy use to maintain security. It's all connected.
It's definitely complex. The paper broke down factors influencing price too, right? Internal and external?
Figure 4 laid it out. Internal things like, transaction cost, miner rewards, that difficulty level we keep mentioning.
Okay.
And external stuff like just how attractive the crypto market is overall, wider financial things like exchange rates or gold prices, even politics and regulations.
Right, all feeding into the price,
Yeah.
which then affects mining profitability and energy use. It's a cycle.
Definitely a cycle.
Okay, let's shift to the practical side. The Cudo Miner guide you sent. How does someone actually do this mining stuff?
Well, it gives a few options. One is buying those dedicated ASIC miners,
ASIC?
application-specific integrated circuit, hardware built for one job, like mining Bitcoin super efficiently.
Pros and cons.
Pro apart, very effective for specific coins. Con, expensive and risky. If the coin's code changes, your expensive ASIC might become a paperweight.
Ouch. Okay, what else?
Build your own rig with GPUs, like in the Durgy Park study.
More versatile.
Yeah, potentially cheaper up front, and you might be able to resell the GPUs or use them for something else later. Or cloud mining. You basically rent the computing power from someone else. Less technical hassle, but you pay fees.
Makes sense. If you build your own GPU rig, what do you need? The guide mentions specifics.
Yeah. A special frame, not a normal PC case, for airflow. That's crucial because they get hot.
Okay.
A motherboard that can handle multiple GPUs plugged in at once. CPU and RAM can be pretty basic, actually. Like, 8 GB RAM is fine.
But the power supply?
Cannot skimp there. Needs to be beefy. 650, 750 watts, maybe more, depending on how many GPUs you're running. It adds up fast.
Definitely sounds like a serious hardware investment.
It is. And picking the right GPUs matters too. The guide mentioned the Nvidia GTX 1070 and AMD RX 580 were popular picks in early 2019.
Why those?
Good balance between hash rate, that's the mining power, and how much electricity they use. Watts.
Okay. And beginners often started with older cards.
Yeah, mention the AMD R9 series sometimes. And there are websites like What2Mean or Coin Wars that help you calculate if a setup might actually be profitable.
Useful. The guide also talked about software types. ASIC, GAU, CLI.
Right. ASIC is the hardware. GUI means graphical user interface, point-and-click, user-friendly software.
Easier for beginners.
Generally, yeah. CLI is command line interface. Text commands. More efficient maybe, more control, but you need to know what you're doing.
More technical.
And then cloud mining is the renting option again. The guide mostly recommended GUI software for newcomers.
Okay. Let's quickly revisit hash rate and difficulty.
Yeah.
Hash rate is the total network power.
Yeah, all miners combined, solving those crypto puzzles to secure the network. More hash rate generally means more security.
And for an individual.
More hash rate in your rig means a better chance of finding a block and getting the reward. Like Bitcoin was 12.5 BTC every 10 mins back then. Now it's 6.25. Ethereum was maybe 2 ETH every 15 seconds or so.
And difficulty adjusts automatically based on that total hash rate.
Correct. Keeps block times consistent. If hash rate doubles, difficulty roughly doubles too. So you need twice the power to find a block in the same amount of time.
Got it. And getting paid solo versus pools?
Solo mining. Tough odds. Especially for big coins like Bitcoin. The chance of finding a block on your own is tiny because the network hash rate is immense.
So pools are more common.
Much more common. You team up, combine power, share the rewards based on contribution.
More stable income, but smaller pieces of the pie.
Exactly. And the pool takes a small fee usually.
Right. And you need a wallet, obviously.
Absolutely. To store any crypto you earn, Bitcoin has options from running your own full node, very secure, but resource intensive, to simpler online or hardware wallets.
And the mining software itself.
Depends on your hardware, GPU ASIC, and comfort level, GUI CLI. Things like CG Miner, Easy Miner. For Ethereum back then, wallets like Mist or My Ether Wallet were common, used with miners like Claymore, Miner, mostly command line stuff.
But Cudo Miner offered a GUI.
Yeah, Cudo aimed for a more user-friendly GUI approach for various coins.
Okay, now this Reddit thread about Nvidia drivers. Fascinating stuff. Someone asking if new drivers hurt mining.
Yeah, the user was on an older driver version and worried newer ones might actually lower their performance.
And what did people say? Was there an answer?
Not really a clear one. That's what was interesting. Some folks said, yeah, they saw small bumps with specific newer drivers like the 388 series.
But not everyone.
No universal agreement. A lot of people seem to feel that, the driver's impact might be pretty small compared to just having a stable, well-configured system overall.
Yeah. Stability over tiny performance gains. Makes sense.
And there was talk about these modified drivers people were selling online.
Claiming big boosts.
Yeah, big hash rate increases. But the consensus on Reddit was probably scams.
Or risky?
Or risky, like maybe they mess with safety features or cause crashes. Not worth it.
So the advice was?
Test for yourself, basically. What works best depends on your specific motherboard, your Windows version, the exact GPU model. It varies.
Trial and error.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned version 382 something as maybe a decent starting point for testing.
Yeah.
But yeah, stability seemed key for most people.
Okay. Lastly, Nvidia's own perspective from that earnings call. They weren't talking mining drivers, were they?
No, not directly. That Q4 2025 call was all about AI. Artificial intelligence.
Right. Huge demand for their GPUs there.
Massive. And
Right.
Jensen Huang, their CEO, he was really emphasizing how their GPUs are general purpose.
Unlike ASICs.
Exactly. He argued NVIDIA's architecture is way more flexible, good for all sorts of AI tasks, training models, running inference, data processing, the works.
And they're innovating fast.
Constantly. He talked about huge performance leaps and how important their software ecosystem is for AI.
So the takeaway for our topic, even if they aren't focused on mining drivers for older cards.
Their main focus is pushing performance for demanding tasks, especially AI. Their latest stuff, like the Blackwell architecture, offers massive gains.
Suggesting newer hardware probably does offer big advantages for heavy computation, whether it's AI or potentially crypto mining.
That seems like a reasonable inference, yeah. The cutting edge is moving fast, driven heavily by AI needs.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways from all this.
Well, first, crypto mining, definitely for Ethereum back then, was seriously energy intensive. We saw that in the Durga Park study.
And that energy use depends a lot on the specific hardware and that ever-increasing difficulty.
Right, and profitability isn't just energy, it's crypto prices, difficulty, all the operational costs combined.
In the practical side,
Yeah.
miners have choices. Buy ASICs, build GPU rigs, rent cloud power.
Choose software, GUI, or CLI. Decide solo versus pool mining. Lots of factors.
And the Nvidia driver thing seems nuanced, maybe less impactful than overall system stability for miners.
Seems that way from the discussion, yeah. Stability often trumps tiny speed tweaks. Meanwhile, Nvidia itself is laser-focused on AI performance gains with their new tech.
Okay, so final thought to leave people with, something provocative.
Okay, how about this? We know proof of work, like Bitcoin and old Ethereum use, takes a lot of energy. And we see AI driving insane hardware innovation, making computation incredibly powerful. So how might cryptocurrency security mechanisms, these consensus methods, evolve? Will we see new approaches become dominant that balance security with, environmental concerns and leverage all this new computing power differently?
Interesting. Moving beyond just raw energy competition.
Maybe. It's a space that's definitely still developing. That tension between energy, security, and performance, it's probably going to shape what blockchain tech looks like in the future.